The art of alignment for hip openers is that you want to stay really active in your feet and legs because your legs will feed. They're literally like fuel to open your hips. And you're really going to move the thighs back and then wide. So you're looking to actually expand your pelvic floor and your hips. It's this big opening quality. We focused on some of that alignment and using in the blocks in Module 4. So I'm going to go right into the postures that we're going to use. Now we're going to start in a low lunge because this is a one that's easy to get lost on. And a lot of times, you know, I always have you tuck your back toes under because it helps bring power to your legs. But if you go ahead and just kind of let your feet hang out, a lot of the pressure goes to this back leg, upper inner thigh. So tuck your toes under, charge your legs. That's point number 1 for your hip openers. With your charged leg, you have energy, you have fuel. Watch what's going to happen to this thigh. You're going to hug in and move the thighs back. That's going to create opening in your hips, opening in your pelvic floor. And then you scoop your tailbone down, and now the pelvis can move towards the floor, very close to the floor even, but you don't want that thigh bone to pop forward. You want to keep drawing it back. And then you can keep moving the tailbone down to take the hip openers deeper. And then you can be in a very, very deep lunge, but you're going to feel it on the right outer hip as well as the left upper inner thigh. And you feel this slightly, you don't want to overstrain this area. So that's part of the reason this is very important. Now the same thing happens in Pigeon Pose. So if I just bring the right foot down to Pigeon Pose, a lot of times people just kind of collapse onto one side or the other in Pigeon Pose, and you might get a stretch like this for a while, but it's a really uneven stretch and that can actually jam your sacrum. So you want to have the hips level or working towards level, and the way to get that is you tuck the toes under and you move your hips to square, and you keep them that way by hugging your legs together, right? Got power in the legs so you can move this upper inner thigh back, right? So there's like an indention here where the thigh bone meets the pelvis. And then you can scoop the tailbone. Now when I do that, I can actually lower my pelvis towards the floor, just like in the lunge pose. So instead of just staying lifted, you can move the hips towards the floor, but now there's this balance and equilibrium in the hips and the pelvis. And there's an expansion and widening in the hips that wasn't there before. And then you scoop the tailbone down, lift the belly up and in, and that would take you easily into a high pigeon, or it can easily take you down into a low pigeon. So the alignment's really the same, whichever form you're in pigeon or any hip opener. Feet active, legs strong, power in the legs, so you can move the inner thighs back and apart, which will widen your pelvis apart, and then you scoop your tailbone, lift the belly. Very, very simple. Another way to see this action is if you're standing here, right? If I just stand here, most of us, we'd kind of be tucked under, and that would translate to the thigh bones moving forward if we were standing. So here, hug your heels together like you're going to click your heels together, then push your thigh bones back and apart, right? So it's like the thighs move back and you'll feel the buttocks widen, the pelvic floor widen. You want to keep that. You've just created space. That's what opening your hips is all about. And scoop your tailbone, lift the belly up and in, so there's just a little suction in the belly. And then that is a very powerful hip opener here, and way to train your thigh bones to move back, tail to move down. Now in seated hip openers, particularly ones like Agni Stambhasana, fire log pose, it's very easy just to let the feet get all weird, right, sickling. And it can, if you don't have integrity in your feet, it's very easy for the pressure to go into your knees. So you want to keep the feet active, right, no matter where they are. And I'll even press the pinky toe side of my foot down so much here that the outer heel lifts up on the lower leg. Now what I'll do here is actually lift the hips up and then swing your hips back. So the thigh bones swing back. If you're looking from the side, you usually automatically be tucked under when you sit down, so you can see that kind of tuck here in the flesh of the buttocks. And then you lift up, swing your hips back. That takes the hips wide and apart. You can also do the manual inner spiral adjustment that we learned. And then that will help widen the pelvic floor. You just scoop your tailbone down, lift your belly, and then you can start to bow forward or sit upright. But those actions of keeping the feet active, charging the legs, bringing power to the legs so you feed fuel to your hips. You move the thigh bones back, the sitting bones wide so you have space, and then hook your tailbone down so your belly lifts up and in. Those are the art of alignment for hip openers. Those will not only open your hips, but you're going to feel expanded and opened in your low back. You'll feel stabilized by the tailbone moving down and drawing your low belly up and in. And you'll become more flexible as well as more fluid in your movements. So enjoy those, and I'll see you again. Namaste.